Good morning, church. If we haven't had the chance to meet, my name is Emily, and I'm one of the pastors on staff here at Liberty Towers. And this morning, I have the privilege of kicking off our brand new series that we are calling From Surviving to Thriving. Because we believe that God wants more for us this summer, right? That sometimes it's so easy to slip into that survival mode where you're just trying to get by, or just keeping our head above water. Some seasons are like that. But I wonder this summer, what would it look like that even if your circumstances didn't change, if nothing around you changed, is there a way that you can thrive this summer with God and with each other in this community? When we talk about this word thrive throughout this series, we mean something really simple. We're just talking about to grow and develop well. Right? That's what we desire. That's what God desires for us. He wants us to always be growing. It doesn't matter how many years you've been walking with Jesus, or if you're not even sure what you think about Jesus yet. If we're thriving, what does it look like to grow and develop well in the different circumstances of life? And today specifically, we are talking about what does it look like to thrive with God in the midst of fear and struggles and storms. And one of the best stories I know is about a true story about a man named Horatio Spafford. Back in 1873, a very old picture here, Horatio kissed his wife and his 4 daughters goodbye, and he sent them on a ship to sail across the Atlantic. Weeks later, he received a telegram back from his wife that said, "Saved, alone." See, while they were out on the ship, their ship collided with another ship, and it began to sink very quickly. Horatio's wife survived, but all 4 of his daughters drowned in the sea. And this is after Horatio and his wife had already lost their younger son, and they'd experienced some financial crisis. And now this? How was he going to survive this? Not even thinking about thriving, just how is he going to survive? And I don't know how, but somehow he managed to get himself on a boat, because he had to go across to go be with his grieving wife. As Horatio is on the boat, he passes the exact spot where his daughter's boat went down. And he does something very unexpected. Instead of wallowing in his grief, giving in to fear and panic, Horatio grabs a pen and a paper, and he writes a poem. He writes a poem that turns out to be a hymn that the churches have been singing ever since. And it starts like this. It says, "When peace like a river flows." He says, "Whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say," do you know it? "It is well. It is well with my soul." Did you know the history of that song? It gets me. Because I don't know about you, but if someone were to ask me how it's going, if I respond, "It's all well," I don't mean that I'm walking through tragedy. I'm probably only going to say it's well if my circumstances are smooth. But that is not the same conclusion that Horatio came to. His storm was still raging. He was in the middle, the beginning of grief and unimaginable loss. And yet he was able to get to a place where he could find and hold on to peace. How? How do we get there? This is the question that we're going to try to answer today is, what do we do when the fear takes over and nothing we do can calm the storm? Right? I know we've all been there. Hopefully you haven't experienced something as horrific as Horatio, but some of you have. Some of you have experienced unimaginable loss and grief. And a lot of us in this room, I know that you currently, right now, are in survival mode. You don't know how the electric bill is gonna make it this month. You don't know if your marriage is gonna make it to August. You don't know how your son is gonna ever overcome the addiction he keeps battling. Like, we are in some storms. So is it possible to find and grab onto peace in the middle of the storm? Not just after it, but in the middle of it. So to help answer this question, we are going to look at a text where Jesus and his disciples were in an actual storm. All right, we're going to read through the passage all together, and then we're going to go back and go through it slowly. So if you want to read with me, we are going to be in Mark chapter 4, starting at verse 35. It says, "That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, 'Let us go over to the other side.' Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was, in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion." How nice. The disciples woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. Then he asked them, the disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified, and they asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Back at the beginning in verse 35, where it says, "That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, 'Let's go over to the other side.'" Whose idea was it to get in the boat? Jesus's. Jesus told the disciples they were going to get in the boat, and he didn't just say we're getting in the boat, he told them where they were going. He said, "We are going over to the other side." And yet, as we just read, the first sign of trouble, what happened to the disciples? They start freaking out, they start panicking, like they didn't know that whenever Jesus says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. He said he was going to the other side, but they forgot. Just like you and I, we forget all the time. That's why we need to keep showing up. Why we keep showing up here and here, because we forget. We are prone to forget who God is, and that when he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. Verse 36, leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, Jesus, just as he was, in the boat. There were also other boats with him. So Jesus had been teaching all day long in a boat. That's why I said, just as he was. He's like, "I'm already in this boat. I'm tired. Let's go." Right? He was in the hot sun teaching all day long. And I find it really interesting that it gives us this detail that there were also other boats with him. Because these other boats are never mentioned again throughout the passage. We know what happened to Jesus' boat, but what happened to all the other boats? Did they see the signs of the storm and turn around in time? Did they make it to a lower shore? Or did they get lost at sea? We don't know. We just know that Jesus was gaining in popularity, so much so at this time that even after listening to him all day on the shore, his followers said, "We have to go where he is going." And so they followed him into the sea. Everything is calm, everything is still, and then boom, verse 37. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. A furious squall. This is not talking about a light drizzle, a little California rain. Think more Florida hurricane, right? The Greek in the words calls it a mega storm. So it was a mega storm. And a lot of the disciples, they were fishermen. They were used to storms. They'd been in a storm before, but there was something different about this one. So here's a picture of the Sea of Galilee. It is located about 700 feet below sea level, surrounded by hills. And so the way it's situated makes it really easy for the wind to kind of funnel in and get trapped over the water, which makes quick and violent storms that are completely unpredictable and unexpected. It's kind of similar to the conditions that we saw just a couple weeks ago up in Lake Tahoe, right? Normally the water is calm and it is still, but a couple weeks ago, within about an hour's span of time, boom, 45-mile-an-hour winds, waves in Lake Tahoe, 6 to 10 feet tall. It seemed to come out of nowhere. So the disciples, rightly so, were freaked out. They were panicking. There was actually a real chance that they could die. Right? Their boat is filling up with water. They're not being irrational here. Like, there is a real threat in front of them. And this whole time, where is Jesus? Verse 38, Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care?" Have you ever wondered, how was Jesus able to sleep during that storm? I mean, my mom is a pretty deep sleeper, but I think even she would wake up in the middle of this type of furious squall or storm. So how is Jesus able to sleep? Was he just that exhausted? Maybe. Maybe he was tired. But I think more so, I think that Jesus' ability to sleep in the storm demonstrated his deep and beautiful trust in God the Father. He knew that his mission on earth had not come to a completion yet. He knew that God wasn't going to end it all right here in the middle of the sea. He knew that God was in control, that God cared about him, all these people. So he trusted. He was able to sleep. This scenario came to life for me a couple weeks ago when the stomach bug hit our house. Not fun. Don't recommend it. So one night, my 4-year-old wakes up and he starts throwing up repeatedly, like not just a little bit, a lot of it. And you know what I did? I went back to sleep. Before you judge me too harshly, I know you're thinking, Emily, your 4-year-old is throwing up. He's sick and gross. And you went back to bed? Don't you even care? Of course I care about my son. I would do anything for him. Middle of the night cleanups included. But that particular night, I wasn't needed. My husband was with him. And I deeply trust my husband. He is patient. He is present. And I knew that if he needed me, that he would come and get me. And that if he didn't, I could trust that my son was being taken care of by his loving father. That's what I picture when I see Jesus sleeping. It's not that he didn't care. It's not that he was turning a blind eye. He just had such a deep trust. And I also noticed the storm didn't wake him up, but he did get up. What woke him up? Their voices. The storm didn't wake him up, but their voices did. Because God is the God who hears his people, who responds to his people. He did it then and he does it now. Verse 38, he got up and he went over and he rebuked the disciples and he said, "How dare you wake me up?" Nope, not what it says. He got up and he rebuked the wind. He rebuked the wind as if it was a toddler, as if it was a small child. He said, "Hey, you, quiet down, I get in that corner, and don't make a peep. That's what he said to the wind. And then he said to the waves, quiet, be still. Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. It'd be one thing if the wind just died down. You could maybe chalk that one up to luck and good timing. Right? But if you were experiencing 6 to 10 foot plus waves, even if the wind stopped, it would take about 2 hours for those giant waves to start calming down naturally. But here it tells us the wind and the rain and the waves stopped immediately. This was not coincidence. This was command. This was command. And before this instance, there has never been anyone who could command the sea. There were other prophets who claimed that they could heal, that they had some sort of mystical powers, but there has never been anyone except for the one true God, except for Yahweh, who has been able to calm the seas. So now that everything is calm, Jesus handled the problem. He looks to his disciples, and he turns the question back on them. In verse 40, then he asked them, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? I just imagine them standing there, jaws wide open, as they look around at a completely calm sea. It reminds me of a time when my husband and I lived in the South, and I started completely freaking out and screaming and standing up on top of furniture because a snake was in our house. And then by the time my husband comes and he grabs this creature, it's this like giant type of worm, not poisonous, not venomous at all. And he's like, what were you afraid of? Like, it was just a little worm. It wasn't poisonous. It wasn't going to hurt you. So I picture the disciples right now looking like, everything is completely calm. There is no danger right now. But to the disciples' credit, their fear was real, right? They were actually in danger. It wasn't a fake snake. It was a real storm, and there really was the potential for them to die. And the problem here wasn't the fear. The problem is that the disciples were focusing on the fear and the wind and the waves so much that they forgot who was in the boat with them. Right? They forgot that they were with Jesus. He says, why are you so afraid? He's not scolding them. It's like, have you ever had a little kid be afraid to jump off the edge of a pool, even when you as the parent are standing right there to get them? Right? I remember these conversations with my kids. I'm like, just jump, buddy, I got you. And for some reason, they're so afraid. I'm not mad. He's not in trouble, but I'm trying to invite him in to trust me. I'm like, bud, I sustain your life every single day. I do so many things for you. You think I'm going to let you drop now in the water? Like, do you still not trust me after all this time? Just jump. That's what Jesus is saying to the disciples. He's saying, you have been with me all this time, and you still don't have confidence in me? You were with me. You were with me when I called out that impure spirit in Mark 1 out of the man. He used the same words that he did to calm the storm. He said, be quiet. And the impure spirit left the man. He says to his disciples, you were with me when I healed Peter's mother-in-law. You were with me when I healed that man of leprosy. You have been with me, and you have seen me show power over the spiritual realm, power over the physical realm of healing, and now, today, they just saw Jesus show his power and his authority over the natural realm, over the storm. It's not that they were afraid. It's that they forgot. Here's the thing. Faith, if you're trusting in Jesus, your faith does not ignore the storm. But faith does remember who's in the boat. It's not about ignoring fear. It's not about pretending that you're not in a storm when you're really in a storm, because some of you are in a storm. Emotionally, financially, internally. It's one of the greatest honors to get to sit with you week after week and to hear your stories and to hear the things that you are walking through. And a lot of you are experiencing some storms. Faith doesn't ignore the storm. It remembers who is in the boat. Verse 41, the disciples finally start to get it. It says they're terrified. And they asked each other, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. They were afraid of the storm, but now they are terrified because they're starting to realize maybe this wasn't just a teacher with us in the boat, right? Mark uses this, if there's any other English majors out in the room, Mark uses this literary technique called the Messiah secret. So there's this secret about the Messiah to the disciples. They don't know. They haven't quite figured it out. They haven't realized yet that Jesus is the Son of God. But you and me, when we're reading it, Mark tells us right at the beginning, if you flip over to Mark 1, very first chapter, very first verse, Mark 1:1, the beginning of the good news about Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God. Right, so we know this, but the disciples are figuring it out in real life. Up to this point, they've just known that Jesus is a teacher. Really good teacher, and he has this like strange power from God that nobody can quite explain, but he's a rabbi. He's a teacher. When they go to him in the storm, that's what they say. They say, teacher, do you not care? But now, after seeing what Jesus just did, they're terrified because I think they're starting to realize they're not just with a good teacher. They're with the one who has authority over all things. It reminds me of this scene in The Lion King. Simba and Nala run off like they're not supposed to. They go to the elephant graveyard. And while they're in there, the hyenas come out and they start circling them and chasing them, and they are afraid for their lives. But then, with one roar, Mufasa shows up on the scene. The hyenas flip on their backs, they whimper, and they run off. Because hyenas are scary, but Mufasa is terrifying. Right? So why would I be afraid of a hyena if I have Mufasa with me? And if I don't have Mufasa with me, those hyenas are really, really scary. But Mufasa, he's terrifying. And he's with me, and he's on my side. And I know he's going to protect me, so I don't have to worry about these hyenas. Right? Jesus is the greater Mufasa. He is the one who has authority over a lot of Disney fans. He is the one that has authority over all of the realms, and he just showed that to us. He is the only one. What he's showing us is that the waves may rise, right? Like the storms may come, the waves may rise, but they can't compete with the one who rides with you. Jesus is with you. And in that question, go back to verse 41 where it says, who is this? The disciples are figuring it out on its own. And I think Mark is also inviting us to answer the question for ourselves too. Who is this Jesus? Who is Jesus to you? Is Jesus some kind of random guy, being, God type thing, like this really distant God who likes to look down and he sees me in my pain and he sees me stuck in the storm and he just watches to see what I'll do with it? Is that who God is to you? Or is God Jesus, who is embodied God, who came down, who died on the cross for you and for me, who defeated not only the power of nature, but of sin and death. No one in the history of the world, no other being, no one who claims to be a God, no one can defeat sin and death but Jesus. So who is he to you? Who is he to you? What does it look like to thrive this week if you're walking through a storm? If you're not walking through a storm, we are so glad that you are here. And we need you in your summery season to partner with us. Because there are a lot of hurting people in this room, in our community. And so as you are thriving, if you're in more of a summery season, we need you. And for those of you that are more in that survival mode, if you're feeling problem after problem, what does it look like to thrive this week and the rest of the summer? I think it starts with just an awareness of who God is and where he is, that he is the God that's in the boat with us. Because here's the thing. I am not saying that all of your problems will result in miracles. That storm in Tahoe, that killed 8 people. That one wasn't stopped. Just this weekend, many of you are aware there's a flash flood in central Texas. And as of last night, there were at least 15 children and 23 adults who did not survive the storm. There's more that are still missing. There are so many families who are not receiving the miracles that they hoped and that they prayed for. Not every problem will end up in a miracle, but every miracle, every single one that happened in this book, that's happened after, every single miracle starts with a problem. So if you've come in here today, if you're watching online today, and you have a problem, you're in a storm, the good news for you is you're a candidate for a miracle. And when I say miracle, really what I mean is that you are a candidate to experience God's supernatural peace and presence and power. I don't know how he's going to show up in your storm, but I know he's going to do at least one of these 3 things. First, he can silence the storms, our circumstances. He can change them. He wants us to wake him up and ask. Say, God, I need you to save my marriage. I need you to protect my son. I think sometimes we stop asking God because we forget who he is and how powerful he is, and we have to keep asking. Keep going, because he can. He can silence the storm. That's the God that we get to walk with, who we believe in, who we follow, who we are growing to become more like. 2, he can still your soul. Maybe he won't stop the storm. Maybe that problem, that circumstance is not going to end up the way that you want it to. But it is still possible, like Horatio, to receive that peace that surpasses all understanding, to have just lost everything and say, God, it is well with my soul. But I also am not naive enough to stop at those first 2. Because I know some of you trust God and you still struggle internally and externally. But the 3rd thing I promise is true for every single one of us. Not he can, not he might, but he will stay in the boat. He will stay in the boat. Even if you don't feel him, even if it doesn't look like it, we can say that it is well with our soul because we know that the one who has power and authority over it all loves us enough to stay in the boat with us. Amen. The storm didn't wake Jesus. Their voices did. He hears us even when the waves are loud. So our Thrive practice this week is to journal. If you're not a journaler, pull out a note on your phone. I want you to write something down this week. When we write it, we're more aware of it, we can name it, and then I want you to look back and see what is God going to do with it. Name that storm, identify it, wake Jesus up about it because he is still in the boat with us. So So after I pray for us, I would encourage you, if you are in a spot where you just really need some prayer, we have some people wearing prayer lanyards. They're going to be in that back right corner. We would love to pray with you, to name those storms, because when you name something, it loses its power. We're going to give it to Jesus, the only name that can bring peace. So right now, Jesus, we bring all of these storms in front of you. God, whatever we have brought into this room, whatever is raging in our outside circumstances or internally, Jesus, we just trust that you are God and we are not. God, we ask you to calm the waves, to still our souls. And we are so grateful that no matter what, you promise to never leave us, never abandon us, that you will remain in the boat with us no matter how hard the storm hits. And because of that, we can say that it is well.